Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayashva Bhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahakatara Juhava Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravo Binedus Tam Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi. So as you, I hope, remember, we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam with some review of the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam in connection with the general design of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is to prepare us to understand the 10th canto or Krishna Charita properly. The 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, culmination of Srimad Bhagavatam. But to understand the 10th canto properly is not so easy due to different problems, anarthas within our heart. These anarthas create certain doubts within us. This connection between the anarthas and doubts are very, very important to understand. Whenever we have doubts, it's a result of certain attachments which may not be even known to us. Most of the attachments are like the down part of the iceberg. We can only see the conscious part of our problems, but there are much more problems within our subconsciousness. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, while describing different stories, helps us to understand or to overcome all these unwanted problems which are there within our heart, and ultimately give the space within our heart which will help us to understand the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, in this scheme of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam plays a very special role because most of the Puranas define Srimad Bhagavatam by saying that this is the story, this is the Purana which contains the story of Vritrasura, which is within the 6th canto. And out of all the stories, it's not Krishna's story which is taken as the definition of Srimad Bhagavatam. Ironically, or it's not so easily understandable because we all know when we speak about Srimad Bhagavatam, that's the story of Lord Krishna in the 10th canto. But all the Puranas which give definition of Srimad Bhagavatam Purana, they are unanimous by giving Vritrasura story, or Vritrasura Vada story, rather, the story of killing Vritrasura, as the hallmark of Srimad Bhagavatam, as the characteristic, lakshana, specific, distinguishing characteristic of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why understanding of this 10th canto and the essence of, not 10th canto, 6th canto, is very important. Anyway, I will read 2 verses from this section of Srimad Bhagavatam about killing of the demon Vritrasura. And these 2 verses are immediately preceding the prayers of Vritrasura, which constitute the essence of this story, Vritrasura Vada story. So I will read 22nd and 23rd verses from the 11th chapter of the 6th canto, the transcendental qualities of Vritrasura. Puṁsāṁ kilaikānta-dhiyāṁ svakānām yah sampado divi bhūmau rasāyām rāti yad dveṣa udvega ādhir madaḥ kalir vyasanaṁ samprayāsaḥ. Puṁsāṁ unto persons, kila certainly, ekānta-dhiyāṁ who are advanced in Krishna consciousness, svakānām who are recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his own, which sampadaḥ, opulences, divi, in the upper planetary system, bhūmau, in the middle planetary system, rasāyām, and the lower planetary system, not, rāti, bestows, yat, from which dveṣaḥ, envy, udvegaḥ, anxiety, ādhiḥ, mental agitation, madaḥ, pride, kalir, quarrel, vyasanaṁ, distress due to loss, samprayāsaḥ, great endeavor. Translation: persons who are fully surrendered at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always think of his lotus feet are accepted and recognized by the Lord as his own personal assistant or servants. The Lord never bestows upon such servants the brilliant opulences of the upper, lower, and middle planetary system of this material world. When one possesses material opulence in any of these three divisions of the universe, his possessions naturally increase his enmity, anxiety, mental agitation, pride, and belligerence. Thus, one goes through much endeavor to increase and maintain his possessions, and he suffers great unhappiness when he loses them. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Yayatamam prapadyante tam stathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manusyah partha sarvashaham. As devotees surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Both Indra and Vritrasura were certainly devotees of the Lord. Although Indra took instructions from Vishnu to kill Vritrasura, the Lord was actually more favorable to Vritrasura because after being killed by Indra's thunderbolt, Vritrasura would go back to Godhead, whereas the victorious Indra would rot in this material world. Because both of them were devotees, Lord awarded them the respective benedictions they wanted. Vritrasura never wanted material possessions, for he knew very well the nature of such possessions. To accumulate material possessions, one must labor very hard, and when he gets them, he creates many enemies because this material world is always full of rivalry. If one becomes rich, his friends or relatives are envious. For ekānta bhaktas, unalloyed devotees, Krishna therefore never provides material possessions. A devotee sometimes needs some material possessions for preaching, but the possessions of a preacher are not like those of a karmi. A karmi's possessions are achieved as a result of karma, but those who are those of a devotee are arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead just to facilitate his devotional service. Because a devotee never uses material possessions for any purpose other than to the service of the Lord, the possessions of a devotee are not to be compared to those of a karmi. And the next verse, Traivargikayasha vighatam asmat patir viddhate purushasya shakra tato numeyo bhagavat prasado yo durlabha kinchana gocherah nyayih. O Lord, our Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, forbids his devotee to endeavor uselessly for religion, economic development, and sense gratification. O Indra, one can thus infer how kind the Lord is. Such mercy is obtainable only by unalloyed devotees, not by persons who aspire for material gain. Purport. There are four objectives in human life, namely religiosity, dharma, economic development, artha, sense gratification, kama, and liberation, moksha, from the bondage of material existence. People generally aspire for religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification, but a devotee has no other desire than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both in this life and in the next. The special mercy for the unalloyed devotees is that the Lord saves him from hard labor to achieve the results of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. Of course, if one wants such benefits, the Lord certainly awards them. Indra, for example, although a devotee, was not much interested in release from material bondage. Instead, he desired sense gratification and the high standard of material happiness in the heavenly planets. Vritrasura, however, being an unalloyed devotee, aspired only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord arranged for him to go back to Godhead after his bodily bondage was destroyed by Indra. Vritrasura requested Indra to release his thunderbolt against him as soon as possible, so that both he and Indra would benefit according to their proportionate advancement in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tarine Vanchakalpatarobhescha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ajanulambita Bhujokana Kavadata Sankirtanaya Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksha Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataram Yantah Pravishya Mama Vachim Imam Prasuptam Sanjivayata Kila Shakti Darach Svadamna Anyamscha hasta charana shravana tvagadim pranannamo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. Svasyastu vishvasya kalah prasidatam dhyayantu putani shivam mithodiyam manascha badram bhajata tadoksaje avesyatam no matir apyahaitu ki. So we will try to give the essence of the teachings of the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, because, as I said, it constitutes the lakshana, special feature of Srimad Bhagavatam, according to the Puranas, which give the definitions of different Puranas. Like in Matsya Purana, it is said that in the beginning of one of the Puranas, the Gayatri mantra is the focus of discourse, in it, all the ramifications of true religion are delineated, and the killing of demon Vritra is described. The Purana, which has these characteristics, is known as Srimad Bhagavatam. Skanda Purana more or less repeats the same thing. The Purana known as Srimad Bhagavatam recounts the deeds of human and demigods in the Sarasvata Kalpa, explains the supreme religion in terms of Gayatri, and narrates the slaying of Vritrasura. It has 18,000 verses. In these two verses and a couple more verses from Puranas, this Vritrasura Vadha is being described as the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? It's a very interesting question, because the story of Vritrasura, or the killing of Vritrasura, is being described in many other places. Like in Mahabharata, this story is being described. And even in Rig Veda, the story of Vritrasura, killing of Vritrasura, is described in great details. And Indra is famous in Rig Veda as the killer of Vritra. So, what is so special about Srimad Bhagavatam story in this regard? First of all, in the other Puranas, and in particular in Mahabharata, this story is told in a different way, in a different manner. The story which is being told in Mahabharata is that Vritrasura is a powerful demon, and Indra is pondering how to kill him, and Lord Vishnu appears to Lord Indra and says, you know, you become his friend, and you betray his friendship, and you kill him by using the foam from the ocean. So it's basically, if we study carefully this story is the story of treachery, as it is told in Mahabharata. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a completely different twist of the story. And therefore, Srila Jiva Goswami explains in Priti Sandarbha why it is the Lakshana of Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Vritrasura. He says, because in the story of Vritrasura, the purity of love is depicted in the most graphic way. The message of Srimad Bhagavatam is the message of love. And it is described, love of Godhead, and it is described in many different ways, in many different stories. But there is a special flavor about description which is given in this Vritrasura Vada. Why? Because first of all, Vritrasura is a demon. Second of all, because he is expressing his love right there in the middle of the battle, which is not a very common place to express love. Usually, the battlefield is the place to express hatred. And he's about to kill, or whatever, he's about to be killed by Lord Indra. But at this very tragic moment of his life, the innermost feelings which are there within the heart, very sincere feelings, come out as his prayers. And these prayers is the essence of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the purity of love? One can ask legitimately the question, why it is not the love of gopis which is being described as the most pure? As we know, the ideal of purity of love is the love of gopis. So Srila Jiva Goswami explains in Priti Sandarbha that the love of gopis is more or less, it's a ready-made. It's eternal. It's already there within the heart. Whereas the story of Ritrasura describes how to obtain this purity of love. Despite of all the difficulties, despite of all the problems which he had to undergo. And therefore, it's very instructive for us. It's extremely instructive for us because it teaches us how we can obtain the same level of purity of love. That's the difference, and that's why this particular story and the sixth canto in particular are being chosen as the hallmark of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, having said this, by defining the specialty of the sixth canto, let's consider all other stories which are not less important to convey the message of this canto. So what is the essence of this story? As I tried to explain in my previous lectures, all the stories, they teach us by certain conflict. Like in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is definitely a conflict between Hiranyaksha and Varahadev. And Hiranyaksha and Varahadev, they symbolically represent certain mentality.
Divi,
As I explained, that Srimad Bhagavatam is conveying certain message through these conflicting stories. In the third canto, it's the conflict between Hiranyaksha, the greedy mentality, exploitive mentality of human beings, and the mentality of sacrifice, the spirit of sacrifice, which is symbolized by Lord Varahadev. And there are so many conflicting stories in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, but specifically the conflict between Daksha and Lord Shiva, the spirit of attachment represented by Daksha, this Vedic attachment, Vedic way of life, which makes one attached to opulences and to well-being in this material world, and the spirit of renunciation. So this clashes there in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam we studied last time. In the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is an external borders or margins which are delineated or defined according to our psychophysiological conditions, and how to be within this boundaries and at the same time develop internally. And there is also some sort of conflict in case of Maharaja Bharata, who is engaged in renunciation but internally becoming attached. So this this sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is also a depiction or description of different conflict or different mentality. That is the mentality of a pure devotee with the mentality of a mixed devotee. So it's a very, and therefore also it's a very important topic in Srimad Bhagavatam, in Padma Purana, where the metaphor of Srimad Bhagavatam with the human being, or the body of a human being is, or the body of the Lord, the form of the Lord is being described. The sixth canto is the heart. It's the chest, and the chest is the place where the heart is. So the essential point of this sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's why I have chosen these two particular verses and purports, is the conflict between the pure devotion and mixed devotion. because oftentimes our mentality is like this, that we think that, pure devotion is nice, but mixed devotion is not bad either. We kind of lean or have the tendency towards this mixed devotion, because we do want to have devotion, we are devotees, but at the same time we do not want to lose the opulences and niceties of this world and the good things of this world. So the very important message of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is that these two positions in the world are incompatible. And therefore, they're being depicted as Indra and Vritrasura and how they're fighting. From the very beginning, they're being depicted as the conflict between Yamadutas and Vishnudutas. And that's what we have to really try to understand, how this mixed devotion, which we consider not so bad. I mean, after all, who we are, to aspire for the pure devotion, who we think we are, let's settle for something not so bad. Mixed devotion is not so bad. But Srimad Bhagavatam says, categorically, no, it's bad. Don't settle for it. Don't go for it. It will be a tragic mistake if you somehow or other mix pure devotion with the mixed devotion, or try to, to practice devotion which is not so pure. So that's why, again, this message of the 6th canto is extremely important. Again, because the tendency, the very strong tendency within our heart is there to settle for some sort of mixture when it comes to devotion. So when we take this 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, the first story, the story of Ajamil, as we habitually say, but in reality, if we study deeply this story is not the story of Ajamil. It's the story of Ajamil, yes. But in reality, this story is the story which occupies 3 first chapters of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is the story of Vishnudutas and Yamadutas, their conflict. And Vishnudutas, they represent pure devotional service. And Yamadutas, they represent mixed devotional service. Yamadutas, they are servants of Yamaraj. They're great knowers of Dharma. They're followers of Dharma. And they're not only followers, they are proponents, they are protectors of Dharma. Their job in this world is to protect Dharma from all the transgressions and deviations, from all the sinful reactions, to avoid, punishment for those who are violating Dharma. And in the very first chapter, we see the clash between Yamadutas and Vishnudutas. And Yamadutas, they have their right, they have their position, they try to prove very solidly that they are correct. But Vishnudutas couldn't care less. Vishnudutas, they represent, not symbolically, they translate or transmit, they express the philosophy of pure devotional service, how pure devotional service is much more powerful than any sinful reactions within this world. Therefore, these 3 first chapters are there. In the first chapter, we see the story of Ajamil, and of course the story of Yamadutas, when Yamadutas, they explain why they are right and why they have come to take this soul of Ajamil. In the second chapter, we hear how Vishnudutas, they actually glorify the pure devotional service. How they say that this is, that you are talking nonsense actually. That all your description, they are not applied in case of Ajamil, because Ajamil, somehow or other, at the end of his life, he performed pure devotional service, and therefore all his sins were absolved immediately, completely. And then, of course, Yamadutas, they go back to Yamaraj, and they have a conversation. They are very bewildered. They are completely, you know, they are flabbergasted. They don't know what happened. How is it happened? Who dared to challenge their authority and the authority of Yamaraj, on behalf of whom they were doing this? And Yamaraj is explaining to them the glory of devotional service. So, when we study this sixth canto, what is most important, which we should really understand, is the psychology. Because, as I said, each and every canto of Srimad Bhagavatam describes certain clash of psychology, which is the clash within us, within our heart. So, if we go deeply within our heart, we will see the same sort of conflict. We will find out this conflict, because one part of us is completely with Yamadutas. This part of us says, yes, we have to be very careful. We have to lead very pure life, and devotional service is nice, but just in case. We shouldn't commit any sinful activities, and we kind of subconsciously, subconsciously we lowering the position of pure devotional service. We do not have this complete faith in pure devotional service. That's just by saying Narayan at the end of the life. Everything is finished. No atonement, nothing else. It's quite unbelievable. If we really go deep within our heart, we will understand that there is some doubt within our heart. Is it really enough just to chant the holy name, to chant the holy name purely? So, and that's the essence. And if we study carefully this position, two positions of Vishnudutas and Yamadutas, we will see a very glaring difference between these two positions, or between these two mentalities. First of all, let's compare this. If we take Yamadutas, the first thing which is there, they believe in karma. They think that following karma, following some piety is necessary, and ultimately is necessary to be successful in bhakti. It's very interesting that Vishnudutas, both Vishnudutas and Yamadutas, they believe in bhakti. Yamadutas, they are not karmis in the proper sense of the word. They are mixed devotees. But they think that to achieve success in bhakti, one has to follow some pious rituals and some protective measures and this and that. Only then one can achieve success in bhakti. So that's a very, very important mentality. And Vishnudutas, they say, forget it. You're wrong. This is a mistake. Don't place your faith into all these karmic rituals, because ultimately they will fail you. And this is one of the topics of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, how the performance of all these karmic rituals ultimately will have no effect, whereas the pure devotional service is very powerful. So Vishnu Dutas don't believe in karma. They only have faith in bhakti. Yamadutas, they believe in karma, and they think it's necessary to mix certain karma, certain piety with the bhakti to achieve success in bhakti. And ultimately, this is very clearly follows from this initial chapters of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yamadutas, they don't know real dharma. They don't know the law of dharma. They don't know Bhagavad Dharma. Their understanding of dharma is very mixed. And therefore, their understanding of dharma, they have certain understanding of dharma. Mixed devotees, they have some understanding of dharma, but their understanding of dharma within the modes of material nature. Very often we can see this contamination within our heart when we rely on sattva gun. And we say that it is sattva which will save us, the sattva which will purify us, and so on and so forth. So it's very important internally within our heart to understand the power of devotional service, not formally, not theoretically, but on the level of Ajamil. Ajamil was actually the recipient of the mercy of Vishnu Dutas because he heard their stories. And it's interesting also, there is another very interesting mentality is that Yamadutas, they think that Yamaraj is the supreme ruler, and everything is being under his command or under his control. But Vishnu Dutas, of course, they know that his sphere of control is limited. And and of course, there is another important trait in mentality, whether we should depend on atonement or not. Of course, Yamadutas, they're great proponents of this atonement theory, that you can only be purified if you atone. And we can see in the same 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Indra atones for his sins. Makes prayaschita, makes atonement for his sins, to purify himself from the sins. And here, from the other side, we see Vishnu Dutas who can clearly say that it's ridiculous. You cannot just mix atonement or prayaschita with bhakti. Bhakti itself is enough atonement. You shouldn't rely on atonement. You shouldn't even think about atonement. So again and again and again, we see this very, very important difference in mentality, which we can also, again, distinguish within ourselves or see the traits of this tendency towards the mixed devotional service. And of course, the most important difference between the mixed devotee and the most probably sad difference between the mixed devotee and the pure devotee is that mixed devotee will remain here in this world. Whereas the pure devotee will go back to Godhead. So that's why this mixed mentality is so dangerous. Even though sometimes we kind of saying that it's innocent. It's not so bad, as I said in the beginning. But actually the message of Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very clear. It's bad. It's not only bad, it's very bad. And therefore, the main anti-hero of this sixth canto is Indra. Again and again and again, Indra is showing the ugly face, what are the problems of the mixed devotion. But before we come to this Indra story, which is, as I said, is the main story of the sixth canto, before that, there is a very interesting story after these first 3 chapters, which depict the clash between Yamadutas and Vishnudutas, between the pure devotional service or understanding of pure devotional service and understanding of mixed devotion. And subsequent results. Before we come to the story of Indra, which is only coming in the 7th chapter, before that there are 2 very important chapters describing the history of Prajapati Daksha and Narada Muni. In the first chapter, chapter number 4, Daksha Maharaj, he offers beautiful prayers, beautiful Hamsaguhya prayers, which are ancient prayers. Again, why these prayers are there in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam? To show how mixed devotee can have a very deep theoretical understanding of the nature of the Supreme Lord. Daksha Maharaj, he shows, he demonstrates a very deep thorough understanding of the Supreme Lord in these Hamsaguhya prayers. So much so that the Supreme Lord is apparently very pleased with him. He appears in front of him, gives him benediction, says, yes, very nice, please get a nice wife and get a lot of progeny, this is your service. So that is to say that, the self-identity of a mixed devotee is I am a devotee. As much as we have this self-identity, as much as we say I am a devotee, but Srimad Bhagavatam wants to really distinguish between the mixed devotion and the pure devotion. And basically, Srimad Bhagavatam wants to say that if you're a mixed devotee, don't call yourself devotee. You think you are devotee, but actually you are not. And therefore, after this Hamsaguhya prayers, where Daksha Maharaj is expressing his understanding of the Lord, and the Lord gives benediction, now the real clash again comes into the Srimad Bhagavatam, clash between Narada Muni, who is the representative of pure devotion, and Daksha Maharaj. So, again, let's not underestimate the depths, the very deep roots of this mixed devotion within our heart. And the most interesting part of it, we of course know the story that Daksha Maharaj, he produces 10,000 sons and they go perform austerities, and Narada Muni comes and says, nice boys, completely being spoiled by all this mixed devotional mentality of his father. And their whole life will be spoiled. These nice boys, they will spoil their life because they inherit from their ancestors, from their family traditions, all this mixed thing. And he of course, preaches to them, he tells them allegorical story, and they understand that what we're doing. We're going into deep hole in the earth from where there is actually no coming out. This whole story is very interesting because Narada Muni is explaining how one can easily get entangled into karma. and how by getting entangled into karma, with all the karmic rituals and all the desires to purify from this karma and that karma, how this is actually a completely vicious circle, and there is no coming out from this vicious circle. You cannot really break this karma. Even though you may be in illusion that you're progressing spiritually, you're doing this, you're doing that, in reality you're not. And Narada Muni, by this sad story, he tells them, you know, that there is this hole in the earth, and you will enter into this hole, and there is no way out. And therefore, these nice boys, sons of Daksha Maharaj, they decide, no, we're not going to enter into this hole. Why should we? What is the use? And they're being released. And of course, Daksha Maharaj, he's very tolerant. He's a devotee. He's very magnanimous. And he kind of swallows this first offense by Narada Muni. And he very diligently produces this second set of sons. Again, nice boys. And again, the same thing happens to them. And you know, this is already too much for Daksha Maharaj. And then on the top of it, Narada Muni, who is very compassionate, goes directly to him. After, you know, committing this aparat against Daksha Maharaj and his Griha-medi mentality, his Griha-vrata mentality, against his ideals, against his values, very important values. So he goes right to Daksha Maharaj. And so now Daksha Maharaj, he doesn't have any limitations within himself. He just burst. And I really recommend you to carefully study the curse of Daksha Maharaj. Because if we see the most graphic conflict between the two mentalities, it's being depicted by the words of Daksha Maharaj. Of course, Narada Muni is silent. He doesn't answer anything. It's just Daksha Maharaj, he is just, you know, he's trembling and he's spitting out very cruel words, and he's offending Narada Muni. But by the way of offending him, he, by the way, depicts how the mixed devotees look at the pure devotion. And he says, you're a hypocrite, you create enemies, enmity, you're imposter. You know, doesn't it sound very familiar? When we see a pure devotee, sometimes we can hear this voice of Maharaja Daksha within our heart. You know, when we see somebody who is a pure devotee, and then we get this irritation within, and we say, he's a pretender. He's dressed in this saffron and he's doing all kinds of nonsense, and I'm a real sadhu. It's amazing how Daksha Maharaj, he says that I'm the real sadhu, I'm grihasta, I'm living very pure life, I'm following everything, and all this renunciation is just nonsense. So again, in a beautiful way, Srimad Bhagavatam depicts this conflict between the mixed devotion and the pure devotion. How there is a resistance within our heart against pure devotion. We shouldn't think that this cruel words of Daksha Maharaj is just his offenses, his problem. It's our problem. We have to really identify and relate to this sort of attitude towards pure devotion, because sometimes it's painful for us. Oftentimes it's painful for us when we see some manifestation of a higher level of devotion. And we see and we understand that I cannot really follow this higher level of devotion, and therefore, there is an easy way to kind of solve this problem. Instead of trying to follow this higher standard of devotion, it's easy just to offend this particular devotee and say he's useless, he's good for nothing, he couldn't make it in this material world, he just cannot maintain his family, and therefore he's hiding away from this family responsibility under the dress of a devotee, and this and that, and so on and so forth. And this is all what we see in very kind words of Daksha Maharaj towards Narada Muni. And he says that devotees are cruel. He looks at Narada Muni and says, devotees are very cruel. Devotees defame the Supreme Lord. Daksha Maharaj, he protects the reputation of the Supreme Lord. And he says, all these useless devotees who are traveling around, preaching and converting other people and, bewildering other people, they're just defaming the fame of the Supreme Lord. I am protecting the fame of the Supreme Lord, being such a pure Paka devotee. And they're shameless, and they break friendship, and they create enmity, and then very interesting argument again to get deep within our heart and to understand what's going on there. It's that he says, Daksha Maharaj says that knowledge itself brings detachment, not the changing of the dress. Isn't it also a very familiar argument which we hear? That you shouldn't change your position, you shouldn't change your dress, just develop your knowledge and the detachment will be there. Yes, detachment will definitely be there, but it will also manifest externally. Narada Muni gave knowledge to the sons of Daksha, and they developed detachment. So again, as I said, it's quite a painful exercise to read this sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and to see what's going on. And then, of course, at the end, Daksha Maharaj, he says, if you offend Grihastha once, you may be forgiven. I'm so tolerant, I didn't curse you first, but now I'm cursing you. You will be always in this position. So anyway, again, as I said, Srimad Bhagavatam very instructively gives us understanding about our internal problems. And then this is two chapters, the chapter 5 and chapter 4 and 5. And then the sixth chapter is the progeny of the daughters of Daksha. And in the seventh chapter of the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the real story, the main story of this sixth canto starts. And again, it's a story not only of Vritrasura, it's mostly a story of Indra. Even though we say that the sixth canto is the story of Ajamil, it's the story of Yamadutas. We oftentimes say that the sixth canto is the story of Vritrasura. It is a story of Vritrasura, but it's more a story of Indra. How this attachment is not actually beneficial. And one very important beginning lesson of this story of Indra in the seventh chapter of the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the beginning of the whole story when Indra offends his guru. that's a very grave element or grave important story of this sixth canto. Why? Because again, it betrays the psychology of mixed devotion. You know, for a pure devotee, relationship with the spiritual master is of utmost importance, and they are value in itself. Srila Prabhupada, he often would depict this pragmatic mentality towards Guru. In case of Mayavadis, you know, there is this little story when Prabhupada was walking in a Juhu beach, and he had some difficulties in climbing over some, you know, sand dune or whatever, and one of his disciples gave him the hand and dragged him up. And when he was ultimately up, he kind of beat the disciple by hand and say, I don't need you anymore. And then Prabhupada said that this is how he depicts the mentality that, yes, I need Guru. For what I need Guru? To achieve my ends. It's not, relationship with the devotion, with the spiritual master for the sake of the relationship. It's relationship for the sake of getting something, of extracting something from the spiritual master. And therefore, when this whole story about Indra is being described in the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it starts with this. Because, if you achieve something from your spiritual master, you don't need him anymore. And Indra, he achieved. He is opulent, he is being glorified, and having spiritual master in the midst of glorification, and that's the beginning of this whole story. Indra is sitting there in the heavenly planets, and everyone is glorifying him, and he's enjoying this, and all of a sudden his spiritual master comes and spoils his fun. Indra is so happy, he's in the pinnacle, experiencing the pinnacle of his glory, and then somebody superior comes and spoils the whole fun. Because if superior comes, you have to bow down, you have to become humble, and who wants to be humble? Definitely not us. Definitely not mixed devotion. Yes, we try to use the devotion. We try to use the devotional service for our own end, and then, at one point, the spiritual master and the relationship with the spiritual master becomes an impediment, becomes some obstacle in this regard. And we don't need spiritual master in this anymore. So we remove him because he's an obstacle. So that's a very important trait, character trait of mixed devotee. The pure devotion, the characteristic of pure devotion is that we want relationship with the spiritual master for the sake of this relationship, for the sake of service, and this relationship are eternal. Guru mukha padmava kya chitete koriya kya. Janme janme Prabhu say, he is my master, Lord and master, life after life. That's a very important thing. That's a very important part of pure devotional service. And then not only this, what we will see, of course, Indra immediately becomes remorseful. It's not that the devotee doesn't know how he is supposed to behave. Devotee knows this. But at the same time, he cannot really do anything. He cannot really overcome this tendency. This tendency is very strong. I want to enjoy independently. And therefore, the relationship with spiritual master don't help in this regard. He's just it's counterproductive to what I want to achieve. But what is most important, if we take this message of sixth canto very carefully, it starts with this envy, deeply rooted and hidden envy towards spiritual master, and this envy grows and grows and grows without limit. That's the problem. If you don't check it, if you don't kill it in the inception, if you see this mentality within yourself and you don't kill this mentality, what will happen? First, you offend your spiritual master, who is Brihaspati. Then you accept another spiritual master, Vishvarupa, and then you kill another spiritual master, Vishvarupa. And that's exactly what we see. Sometimes we see devotees, they accept spiritual master, then reject spiritual master, they accept somebody else as a spiritual master, they reject somebody else as a spiritual master, and it goes on and on and on. So that's the mentality which is being described here in the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, how this envy grows without any limits within the heart if it's being unchecked, and how this mentality manifests, and what happens with Indra. Indra first offends Brihaspati, then he kills Vishvarupa, then he kills Vritrasura, and he knows Vritrasura is a pure devotee. He kills Vritrasura, and then before that he kills basically Dadichi Muni. Of course, Dadichi Muni commits suicide, but on request of Indra. This is how it goes. This is this development or devolution of consciousness. You achieve a very high position. Position of a mixed devotee is a very high position. It's a very fortunate position in one sense. But if you keep this mixture unchecked, then this is what's going to happen. You will develop, first of all, envy or jealousy within your heart towards the spiritual master. Then you develop cruelty. You really, Indra doesn't think twice by killing Vishvarup. Vishvarup is his spiritual master. Vishvarup gave him Narayan Kavacha. Vishvarup gave him mantra. Vishvarup gave him everything, for slight offense, for hint of an offense, for some little threat that his position as enjoyer will be somehow or other compromised. Indra kills Vishvarup. And then, he suffers the reactions of this. And as I said again, instead of devoting himself to pure devotional service completely, he undergoes this atonement. He undergoes different purificatory ceremonies to get rid of all these sinful reactions. And it's very interesting. These sinful reactions are being described in Srimad Bhagavatam, how Mahadbhutas, 4 great elements within his body were contaminated. Why they were contaminated? Because of the contaminated mentality. This contaminated mentality, sinful mentality by Indra, which forced him to kill Vishvarup, went into the physical level. And on the physical level, the earth within his body became contaminated and was stinking. The water within his body was contaminated, and he couldn't feel the taste. Like now we undergoing this COVID, and COVID, one of the signs of COVID is the loss of taste. It's basically contaminated water within the body. And loss of smell, it's the contaminated earth within the body. It's how it manifests. And, the fire within his body was contaminated. The 4 elements were contaminated because of the sinful mentality. Again, what I want to say is that Srimad Bhagavatam is very cruel. It's very black and white. It's very uncompromising. And Srimad Bhagavatam wants to say to us, don't go for the mixed devotion. Mixed devotion is not a solution of your problem. Mixed devotion is the root cause of your problems. There will be so many problems, and that's what we read in these verses, that how the mixed devotion is ultimately the cause of all kinds of problems. So, what we see after that, the Narayan Kavacha is being described. Narayan Kavacha in the 8th chapter of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And again, what is the idea of this Narayan Kavacha? Sometimes devotees, they glorify this Narayan Kavacha, and that's definitely a very beautiful protective mantra, shield. But what is the meaning, what is the teachings of this Narayan Kavacha in Srimad Bhagavatam? Thus, Sukadeva Goswami teaches us this Narayan Kavacha to tell us that we should chant this Narayan Kavacha. No. Sukadeva Goswami says this is the mixed devotion. When you want only protection from the Lord, you don't want the Lord. You don't want the Lord himself. You only want to exploit the Lord by protecting you, by giving you protection. So again, this Narayan Kavacha, and then the last chapter of this 6th canto is this puṁsāṁ, ritualistic ceremony, describes what people who have mixed devotion do. They worship the Lord. They worship the Lord with this Narayan Kavacha. They worship the Lord with this puṁsāṁ ceremony. But what is the use? What is the purpose of it? Just to achieve their own end. And ultimately, it's not glorious. Ultimately, you will remain here and you will rot here in this material world. If you don't change this mentality, which is the main teaching of this 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then chapter 9's demon Vritrasur appears. And again, as I said, and Indra accepts all the sinful reactions. And as I said, one of the very important teachings is that, yes, there is all these recommendations in the Vedic literature. Narayan Kavacha, puṁsāṁ, all these atonements which Shiva underwent, the sacrifice which Tvashta did to create Vritrasur. But what is the result? Result is nothing, zero. That's the result. All these glorious rituals which are glorified all over Vedic literature, ultimately Srimad Bhagavatam wants to say they're useless. They don't work. They really don't work. Tvashta committed little mistake in pronunciation, little, not even in pronunciation, in accent. Little, this Indra Shatru, he pronounced not like Tatpurusha Samasa, but like Bahuvrihi Samasa. And that's it. Little mistake. If you don't know exactly, totally, completely Sanskrit grammar and you try to do all these rituals, zero. And at the same time, Ajamila, he was sinful till the end of his life, and then he said Narayan, and he went back to Godhead. Of course, after performing some devotional service in Hardwar and everything else. So that's the beautiful message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then, Vritrasura comes, and there is this battle between Vritrasura in the 10th canto when Indra, of course, I forget to tell about this. Dadichi Muni is also a very important part of it. Yes, let's go a little back into the story. When the demigods, they come to Lord Vishnu and they say, please protect us from Vritrasura. Then Lord Vishnu says, no problem, I will protect you. No problem. It's actually very interesting. That's another important topic or important teachings of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. As we know from our studies of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is poshanam. Atra sarga visargascha sthanam poshanam utaya. Poshanam means tadanugraha, the mercy of the Lord. Poshanam means nourishment, the mercy of the Lord. And basically, this 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining how the Lord is merciful both towards mixed devotees and pure devotees, but how His mercy manifests differently. Tadanugraha. Yes, He is merciful towards Vritrasura. He is merciful towards Chitraketu, and therefore He arranges the whole story of Chitraketu and cursing of Mother Parvati, which we will describe a little later, to arrange his speedy return to the spiritual world. He is merciful towards Indra too. He gives everything which Indra wants. Indra comes to him, and Indra says, please protect us, the Lord. There's this huge demon Vritra, which is the personification of our sinful reactions. Please, the Lord, protect us from sinful reactions. And the Lord says, yes, I protect you. You go to the Dadichi Muni, and you come to the Dadichi Muni, and you fold your hands. And Dadichi Muni, he is a great saint, and you say, oh dear Dadichi, please give us your body. And from your body, from the bones of your body, Vishwakarma will create Vajra, and this Vajra will kill Vritrasur. Later in Brihad Bhagavatamritam of Srila Sanatana Goswami, when Narada Muni goes to Indra and glorifies Indra and says, Indra, you're such a great devotee. You're such a great devotee. Lord comes himself personally to protect you, and always whenever you pray for him, gives you protection. Lord Indra says, this is not so. He humiliates me. Every time when I ask him for protection, he comes and he humiliates me. He humiliated me when he came as Vamanadev, when I asked him for protection from Bali Maharaj. But even more so, he humiliated me when I came to him and I asked him, please protect me from Vritrasura. And what did he do? He sent me to the Dadichi Muni, who is my enemy, whom before that I cut the head of. That's another feat, heroic feat of Lord Indra. He became very jealous and very envious, and when Dadichi Muni wanted to teach Brahma Vidya or Madhu Vidya to Ashwini Kumaras, he just cut his head off, as he did with Vishwarup. But luckily, Ashwini Kumaras, they made some arrangement and they, put some horse head in Dadichi Muni. But then the Lord himself comes and says, you go to this same Dadichi Muni whom you offended and you beg his body from him. And Lord Indra, he stands there flabbergasted. That's probably the last thing which he expected. And he says, how he will give me this body? I already offended him. And the Lord says, no, you put in front Ashwini Kumaras. And Ashwini Kumaras, they are disciples of Dadichi Muni. Dadichi Muni likes them very much. If Ashwini Kumaras will be there, he's generous. He will say, yeah, ultimately, take my body, no problem. So, and that's exactly what happened. Lord Indra comes to Dadichi Muni, and Dadichi Muni first teases him. And he says, who do you think you are? You're coming to me and you're saying, give your body. And our body is so dear to us. And the demigods start preaching to him, don't be attached to your body. Isn't it? It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. Lord Vishnu really humiliates Lord Indra. He says, you go to him and you preach, give the sermon to Dadichi Muni, which is very hypocritical. You're attached to your own body. You're afraid to lose your own body. You go to Dadichi Muni and you say, your great sage, so you're not supposed to be attached to your body. Give up your body. This is the most glorious thing which you can do. This is how Srimad Bhagavatam describes to us the problems of mixed devotion. Mixed devotion ultimately brings about humiliation. Because the Lord reveals our attachments to the world. We may be, it's interesting, as I said, Vishnu Dutas, they're preaching some devotional service. Daksha Maharaj is preaching glorious devotional service. Indra, she is preaching devotional service. But they cannot really walk what they preach. And I'm talking about myself. I'm not talking about Indra. What is the use of talking about Indra? We really have to see this problem within ourselves. We all know the theory of pure devotional service. We all preach the glory of pure devotional service. But when it comes to practice, it's a completely different story. It could be a completely different story. And Srimad Bhagavatam says to us, before it's too late, you better realize what you're preaching to others. Don't remain within yourself as a mixed devotee. Try to purify your devotion, because there is no use, because it's actually very pitiful condition to remain in this condition. And of course, this, let me repeat this verses which we read. It's actually very interesting. This is what Vritrasura says, because in these two verses he explains the difference between the pure devotion and the mixed devotion. Person who fully surrenders at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always thinks of his lotus feet are accepted and recognized by the Lord as his own personal assistant or servants. In other words, those who are trying to be pure, the Lord recognizes them. You're mine. There is no difference between you and me, and I will protect you. I will be for you all the time. Lord never bestows upon such servants the brilliant opulences of upper, lower, and middle planetary system of this material world. When one possesses material opulences in any of these three divisions of the universe, his possessions naturally increase: enmity, anxiety, mental agitation, pride, and belligerence. So this is exactly what this sixth canto is teaching us. If you want to be a mixed devotee, no problem. Krishna will reciprocate with your desire. He will give you whatever you want, but you please know what you are asking for. You are asking for enmity, anxiety, mental agitation, pride, and belligerence. This is what is coming. Dveṣa, envy, udvega, anxiety, ādhir, mental agitation, madaḥ, pride, kalir, quarrel, vyasanaṁ, distress due to the loss. So that's an inevitable result, which the sixth canto is explaining to us. This is what you get. You'll get, mercy, quote unquote, mercy of the Lord. You'll get His portionam, His anugraha. You'll get what you want, but with it you will get anxiety, pride, cruelty in the heart, so many other things, unwanted things which will come together with it. And therefore, don't ask for this. Please ask for pure devotional service. And therefore, the essence of the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is in this 4 verses which Vritrasura pronounces on this battlefield. And that's the essence of the purity of love. Aham haritava padaika mulada sanudaso bhavitasmi bhuyah manah smaritasu patergunam ste griniteva karma karotu kayah. Aham hare, oh Hari, tava padaika mulada sanudaso. I'm dasa anudasa of, let me become dasa anudasa of your padamula. Manah smaritasu, let my mind always remember about your qualities. Smaritasu patergunam ste, asu pater, O Lord of my life, or somebody who is completely ruling my life. Let me always remember about your qualities. Grinitevak, and glorify this by my words. Karma karotu kayah, and let my body will do some service to you. Nanaka prishtam na chaparameshtyam, na sarva bhūmau, na rasādhipadhyām, na yoga siddhira punarbhavam va, samanjasa tva virahaya kangshe. He says, I don't want anything. I don't want nakaprishtam. I don't want this position on the higher planetaries, parameshtyam on the planet of Lord Brahma. Nakaprishtam. I don't want the position in the heavenly planets. Nasarva bhūmau. I don't want the power over the whole earth. Narasādhipadhyām. I don't want the lower planetary system. Na yoga siddhir. Apunarbhavam va. I don't want even liberation. Samanjasa tva virahaya kangshe. The only thing which I want to be serving as to your lotus feet. And then the main verse of these 4 verses, Ajata paksha iva mataram kagah. What's happening in this verse? It's very important for us to understand, because again, this is how Srimad Bhagavatam or Sukadeva Goswami reveals what was in the heart of Vritrasura, the purity of his love. He says, I don't want anything. I only want to serve. I want not even to serve you. I want to become the servant of the servant. Dasanu daso bhavitasmi bhuyah. And then he is trying to express in this 26th verse to find the words how to express the purity of his love. What is his love? And he does not come to the ideal expression immediately. He just feels this attachment within the heart, and he gives 3 consecutive comparisons, metaphors, how I love you. Ajata paksha, not even how I love you, how I want to love you. Manora vindaksha didriksha tetvam, how my mind wants to love you. So he doesn't say myself, he say my mind. Mano ravindaksha didriksha tetvam, how I want to see you, because he says, when he says my mind, why he says my mind? Why he doesn't say I want to love you? Because when I say I want to love you, there is certain artificiality in it. This is more or less intellectual position. I want to love you in this and that way. But he says, my mind wants to see you in this way. It basically means, he says, that there is a natural affection within my mind. This is what is happening within my mind. It is attached. How it is attached? Ajata pakshaiva mataram kaga. It is attached as much as a little baby bird is attached to a mother bird. Ajata paksha. Ajata paksha means the bird which doesn't have the wings to fly. Therefore, he's ajata paksha. His paksha, his wings is not really born yet. And he's completely helpless. And Vritrasura says, Ajata pakshaiva mataram kaga, how this little helpless bird, baby bird, is waiting for his mother, completely dependent on the mother and waiting for little worm which mother will bring in her beak and give to her. And by saying that this is what it is. I'm a huge Vritrasura. In Mahabharata it's said that Vritrasura was 500 yojanas high and 300 yojanas in his waist. So he was huge. And he says, here I am, my dear Lord. I am a little baby bird and I'm totally dependent on you. But then he says, no, it's not a very good comparison. Because, this baby bird only wants the worm, not the mother herself. And therefore he gives the second comparison. Stanyam yatha vatsa tarah ksudarthah. Like little vatsa, little calf, little baby calf is wants to have stanyam, the ādhir of his mother cow. Stanyam yatha vatsa tarah ksudarthah, to nourish himself, to give. And that's a better comparison because mother cow may go out on the fields for long hours, and then the baby calf is waiting for her and always think only about her, not about anyone else. He just wants to reciprocate with her and to taste her love. But then he says, no, this is not a good comparison either. Because when the calf grows up, he more or less forgets his mother. I want to depict my relationship with the Lord on a level of complete purity, and therefore he gives the third comparison. Priyam priyaiva vyushitam vishana, how the young bride or young wife is waiting at home and her husband is far away, and she's waiting and she cannot find solace in anyone else. She always thinks about the Lord. So basically what Vritrasura is describing, how he always thinks about the Lord. And that's the description of love. What love means? Love means I always think about the one whom I love. And I always think about how we meet with each other and what I will do. And ultimately he is satisfied with this third comparison. The husband will come home after long, long travels, and I will come and I will embrace him, and I will serve him, and I will feed him, and I will caress him and massage his feet and everything else. And that's how he is, how Shukadeva Goswami is describing his love. And that's in the middle, as I said, in the middle of the battle, when Indra is about to kill him. And he preaches to Indra first. And he says, oh Indra, why you don't believe in the words of Lord Vishnu? Lord Vishnu wants you to kill me. He gave you this Vajra. Kill me, kill me, kill me. And then all of a sudden he forgets about Indra. He forgets about everything else. It's the moment of complete silence. And in this silence he tells these stories, these prayers, these 4 prayers. And in the last prayers he says that actually I don't even deserve to be with you. If I want to ask you something, give me the friendship of your devotees. Mamotama shloka janeshu sakyam samsara chakre brahmatam svakarma bih tvanmayat maja dara gehesh asakta chitasya nanatha bhuyat. Let my mind will be only attached to your devotees, and I don't want to have anything else, any other attachment to my body, to wife, to children, to anything else. I just want to be attached to you and to the service of your devotees. So that's the culmination, and that's exactly why this is the characteristic of Srimad Bhagavatam. Because Srimad Bhagavatam, in this very graphic example, shows what does it mean to have pure love. What and how glorious it is to have pure love. And how rare it is to have pure love. And how inglorious it is to have some sort of mixed relationship with the Lord, and how many problems it creates. And then, of course, naturally after that, then the 12th canto is glorious death of Vritrasura, and for 1 year Indra is working hard to cut off his arm and head, and it's really, but Vritrasura is already long before he's in the spiritual world. And then Lord Indra is afflicted by sinful reactions, how this personified sin is chasing him, and he's hiding and trying to understand how he's fallen. It started from little offense of his guru and went to this maha aparat, to the pure devotee of Vritrasura. And then the King Chitraketu story is there. And in one sense, King Chitraketu's story to a greater extent belongs to the next canto. I will explain this when we will describe the summary of the 7th canto. But the essence of this story is how pure devotion can come within our heart. Because it's not enough to glorify the pure devotion, it's also very important to understand how the pure devotion, where it's taken from, where it's coming from, and how one can develop the pure devotion. And then, of course, Mother Parvati curses King Chitraketu to become Vritrasura, and he accepts very nonchalantly, very peacefully this curse of Mother Parvati, and Lord Shiva glorifies the pure devotion of Chitraketu. And then the last 2 chapters are also very instructive, as I said, because the 18th chapter, Diti vows to kill King Indra, and the 19th chapter, performing the Puṁsāṁ ritualistic ceremony, is again futility of all these rituals which are based on devotion but at the same time not constitute pure devotion. But also there is another very important teaching in these chapters, especially in the chapter number 18, Deity vows to kill King Indra. That's the rivalry which is always there between the mixed devotees. Mixed devotees, and this is what we unfortunately can see within ISKCON. We have so much rivalry. You know, I'm better, not I'm better, my guru is better, not my guru is better, this and that. So that is depicted in Srimad Bhagavatam itself. If you are pure devotee, no envy, no rivalry. You just, you know, the only thing which you want, you just encourage others. You know, like Vritrasura encourages Indra, do your devotional service, kill me. Do it, you know, no rivalry. They're right there in the battlefield. One wants to kill, and Vritrasura feels absolutely no envy, no rivalry. He's just happy, and he says, you know, just remember, Lord Vishnu himself gave you this benediction. So remember about this benediction and kill me. But then when it comes to relationship with other mixed devotees, oh no, it's not so peachy. It's not so nice. So there is some rivalry here, and Diti wants to kill Indra. Indra wants to kill the, you know, fetus in her womb, and ultimately, you know, he cuts the fetus into 49 kinds, and there are 49 maruts, different demigods, which will ultimately help Indra. It has ultimately a good end, happy end, but nevertheless, the thing is that, you know, the mixed devotion does not bring you peacefulness and does not bring you even friendship. Mixed devotion will never end up in cooperation. Therefore, Prabhupada said, your love towards me will be proven by the way you cooperate with each other, because cooperation means love. Cooperation means pure love. And when there is no pure love, there will be rivalry, there will be all kinds of competition, there will be all kinds of problems. And that's the message of the sixth canto. Therefore, sixth canto is extremely important for us to understand that the pure devotion service is something which we should strive for, and we should be very careful about these different sprouts of mixed tendencies, which we will try to remove from the very beginning. So that's my little message today in our seminar, the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the point of it? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness. So this was Guru Maharaj, yet another session which makes us reflective, contemplative. But today's session was pretty much with you hit the nail on the head, and brings about it's kind of a mirror. That this canto, through your exposition, you have put a mirror in front of it. So thank you again for this wonderful session. We have a lot to contemplate upon, reflect upon, and most importantly, practice. We will now go to the questions that we have. We have from Anupama Radharani Mataji. Guru Maharaj, if it's okay, this is not one question, but two questions from her.
Yes, no problem.
Okay, so we have a question. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you for an enlightening class and giving us deep insights into the character of Yamadutas, Vishnudutas, Indra, Vrittasur, Daksha and Narad Muni, and the envious mentality of the devotee towards one's spiritual master depicted by Indra towards his spiritual master, Brihaspati. In Srimad Bhagavatam 6th canto 5th chapter, Daksha, though a mixed devotee, was carrying out the orders of the Supreme Lord in increasing the population. Does not Narada's preaching to and having the Hareshwas and Savalashwas give up the idea of Grihasthashram and interference with the desire of the Supreme Lord himself? That's question number 1. So maybe I can ask the next question after this, Guru Maharaj.
See, in this world we have, this world is a mixture. There are, as we know, there is double purpose of this world. One purpose of creating this world is to teach us how to live in this world, to teach us lessons, to help us develop spiritually. And another purpose of this world is to give us facilities to enjoy. And these two purposes are equally important, and when the Lord creates this world, He has both purposes in mind. One purpose is to help us develop spiritually, another one is to help us enjoy, fulfill our desires, and ultimately get frustrated. So, therefore, the Lord always has two desires here. And you can always, when you see some plan of, this world unfold, you can see, from one hand, the Lord, by unfolding this plan or this design, He helps us to enjoy. And that's definitely His desire, because this is the reason why He created this world. But at the same time, He always wants us to be frustrated in these desires and come to Him and develop spiritually. So in the same way, yes, Lord wanted Daksha to create the progeny because that's the purpose of this world. And that's was the Lord's desire. But at the same time, Lord also always wants to have some other desire, which is in the back of His mind. He wants to liberate the living entities. And therefore, when somebody fulfills one of his desires, facilitates the enjoyment of the living entities in this world, the Lord is okay with it. He is happy. But when somebody fulfills deeper desire of the Lord is more happy with him. So the Lord was happy with Daksha on one level, but He was more happy with Narada Muni because he fulfilled his more deeper desire, even though this other desire was also there.
Hare Krishna. The next question is, what is the ultimate destination of a mixed devotee? Since whatever progress one makes on the path of bhakti is never lost, what happens to such devotees? Do they return to the spiritual kingdom after having fulfilled their material desires?
Well, if they're lucky enough and they fulfilled all their desires, which is very difficult, then they return. But usually they will remain for some time here before they develop the pure devotion. They will have another chance, there is no doubt about it, especially if they have association with the pure devotees. They will have a chance to regret about their mistakes, like Lord Indra. He's regretting about his mistakes, but at the same time he's too attached. But when ultimately he will get frustrated, when we will get frustrated, we will develop desire for pure devotion. And that's basically what it is. The sixth canto is to help us to develop this desire for pure devotion quicker, not to postpone it, not again to be satisfied with impure devotion. And if we read Srimad Bhagavatam very deeply, very quickly we will develop this desire. Very quickly. And yeah, hopefully it will happen if we do it properly.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. And the last part of her question is, why did Indra fight Vritrasur? Was he a threat to Indra?
Was it what?
Why did Indra fight Vritrasur? Was he a threat to Indra?
Attract to Indra? Or,
A threat. Was he a threat? Like, what was the reason he fought Vritrasur, Indra?
Well, Vritrasura was a dangerous demon, and he was really, first of all, he wanted to take over the heavenly kingdom, but he was a dangerous demon. He wanted to kill Indra. In the battlefield, he was saying that, you know, you are such a demon to Indra. You killed my brother, Vishwarup, and you killed your guru, and you know, he wanted to, it was serious. There was, you know, in this battle somebody has to die. And it so happened that Vritrasura died and Indra survived, but ultimately Indra had to do it. And therefore, he is glorified as the killer of Vritrasura. It was dangerous for the whole world because Vritrasura was a demon, but deep in the heart, he was a pure devotee. And that's the glory of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is such a how to say this, it's a very unusual book.
And we have a message from Sunaja Mataji from Sharjah. Dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. An amazing class explaining the difference between pure devotion and mixed devotion. Praying for your blessings to develop your love to Hari by completely surrendering, glorifying, doing service and remembering always. So on that sentiment, which represents all of us seeking your blessings, Guru Maharaj, to help us to go from the point of knowing, preaching, to doing. And we indeed, that point has really come out loud and clear in today's exposition of the sixth canto. So we thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. And we continue to pray for your speedy recovery, get well soon, and hopefully we will see you after 2 weeks on the review of the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And before we end, I would request all devotees can please switch on your videos if you can, and you can all unmute yourselves, say Hare Krishna to Maharaj. Please do that.
Just before that, I have a request.
Yes.
One devotee wrote to me, and you know, he listened to this series of classes, and he heard that somebody is doing transcript of these lectures. So if those who are making transcripts can upload these transcripts for the benefit of those who want to study deeper, it would be nice. You can upload it here or you know, these transcripts.
give her an update. Oh, I'm sorry. Apurva wants to.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Please accept my respectful obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj, for such a wonderful class. I can only say that I am very undeserving, but you are pulling me up and pulling me out of the place where I am. And I am sure by your mercy I will be able to understand more. And today I felt I could see a different perspective. And mixed devotional service is our enemy, and that's why we are here in this problem. This is the root cause of our problems. And it gives us hope that we must and we should develop pure devotional service. That is the only way. And for that we are really very, very indebted to you, Maharaj, for your time, your guidance, and your shelter. So the work of transcription for about 7 which have been completed. I just need to do some editing just to see everything's okay. But I will upload it to our website, the School of Vedic Studies, and from there everybody can access Maharaj.
Thank you. Thank
Is
you.
that okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
So, all right, Guru Maharaj. So, thank you very much again, devotees. You can unmute yourself, and you want to say Hare Krishna to Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Very much Maharaj.
Pranam. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So, Guru Maharaj, we have devotees from Sharjah, Dubai, India, and obviously Muscat. And many of the devotees we have been associating regularly on a daily basis and weekly basis. So these are some of, you can say, the regular devotees of the School of Vedic Studies. And here you are, you can also see them. As you have many times mentioned that you can't see anyone, so I thought everyone must come live. And at least you can have a look who have been on the class or sessions week after week. So thank you again. His Holiness Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Maharaj ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.